Good evening. The name is Kevin Stavine. I'm a South African and I'm the original researcher and developer of the complete pyramid of climate. This whole universe, the whole earth, all of it is controlled by atoms of matter. Convert your atoms of matter, you'll get the energy that is involved. And it begins from the center of the earth right through the universe. Everything operates on atoms of matter. And there is no other way to conceive this other than working with atoms of matter. Now, I've gone through this before. In 2010, I said it'll take you 40 years to travel to the edge of this universe, which is the outer edge of this universe. But there is far more involved. Einstein himself never got his relativity right. Stephen Hawking didn't get his time right. And I'm going to show you how this thing works. Now we begin with Earth itself. And then we have the universe round this. And NASA flew in a straight line to the edge of this universe. And it took exactly 40 years to get to that level. But that is not where your relativity goes. That's why Einstein never got his relativity right and correct. Because it's what is outside of this universe that makes the big difference. In everything, we have the Bermuda Triangle, for example. The Bermuda Triangle operates on an exact atom. It operates on an exact atom. Those atoms, when you put them into their different states, world scientists only have 4 states of atoms. In my working through this and discoveries made, there are at least 7 states of atoms. And that's how I could solve the Bermuda Triangle. I first had to find the right atom. And then by that, I took the entire periodic table and converted the entire periodic table into these different states. And then I began working through the entire universe and converting atom by atom by atom. Now, we have the sun, for example. The sun has explosions on it, and these are waves that is put out. But they consist of exact atoms of matter. And scientists don't know that. And if you don't have the exact atoms to begin with, you're never going to get this right. Now, when we get to the outer universe of this universe, the outer edge, I said this: you will not be able to penetrate through because the temperatures will shoot up and skyrocket. And now, what nobody has been told is how this is put together. Now, outside of this universe, and scientists say, we don't know what's on the outside of this universe. It begins like this. You got a layer and a layer and a layer. Now each layer has an atomic value. Each one of them. And they escalate at a set mathematical ratio. So this, from this point to that point, it has an exact mathematical ratio. Then you go to the next point, and it has an exact mathematical ratio. And then we move to the next point, and there are a couple more layers. which scientists are not aware of. And each layer has an atomic value. The universe itself, you cannot have a battery that lasts forever, indefinite. You have to have something that is charging it up and recharging. And that is, these layers is what I discovered, and they each have an atomic value. That is feeding into the system of the entire universe. And then you have all the planets. Now, by recognition of each planet that you see and come across, you must know the atomic value of each planet. That I've worked out. And NASA have many times shown pictures of planets, and they don't know what the atomic value is. But by recognition, I recognize it. Now, to explain that, if I say to you, find an H2O atom, that's one single atom. You're not going to be able to recognize it because it's in its singular form. So you don't know what I'm talking about. But we know that H2O is water. Now, if I showed you a body of water, you'll recognize it as a body of water. Now, that's how I recognize each planet. And when I see it, I can recognize it as its atomic value in multiplication. So it's a big body that I can recognize. And that's how I worked out all the pyramid scheme of climate. It works like this. As I said before, you've got the E zone, which is the inner layer of Earth that held land and sea up. It consists of exact atoms of matter. That's inside of Earth. Then you got the ozone layer. Now the ozone layer is also layered, layer by layer. Now when we have the sun giving off radiation, and there is two things that I discovered on this. The sun, there is what we call instantaneous instant velocity. There are certain atoms that are given off by the sun that immediately penetrate Earth. All right? Those atoms, scientists don't know. And where they go to, what happens inside of Earth, where do they go to? We know that science laws, you cannot have, it says this, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when you're observing this, you can see instant velocity and every action and every reaction that is taking place. That's how I found out about the sun. Volcanoes, for example, and we'll deal with this, volcanoes have been happening for, they say, millions of years. The same scientific equation that you use today in a volcanic eruption must be the same as any time period before that and any time period after that. Same with earthquakes, floods, and everything that occurs on Earth. That's how this works. And then you have the U-zone layer. The U-zone layer, which is what I called the edge of the universe. That's this outer edge. There's the U-zone. Then you have the ozone, which is around Earth, plus the atoms. You need to know exactly which atoms are which atoms. What reaction is coming about. A volcano, when it explodes, That is only the resultant. That's the end result of a reaction. The beginning of that is what is happening inside. What atoms of matter push the lava upwards? You got to know the exact atoms. Einstein didn't know those atoms. It took me 40 years to find it. So that is just a basic introduction. And when I say to you, this is important, you got to know which one is coming first. They run in an order. They run clockwise direction. It works in an order. Everything works in an order. And without that order, you can't calculate anything. Without having the atoms of the E zone, O zone, U zone, you can't calculate anything on planet Earth or throughout the universe. So I want to just finish off there and say to you again, what atoms? You've got planets all of a sudden slamming into planets. There's exact atoms that are attracting those planets together. There are exact reactions taking place when two planets collide. Those atoms are important because there's an instantaneous velocity that hits Earth that affects you and I. Then there's the delayed response which comes through. The same with the sun. The sun has an instantaneous velocity of certain atoms. Then it's got the delayed velocity. Now the delayed velocity is what I need to know. What happens when the sun's radiation hits Earth? To what state are those atoms changed? Where do they go to? What becomes of them? And the only way to find that out is when you have worked through the universe, come to the edge and worked through all of these layers. Then you find atoms that Einstein never knew about and couldn't calculate or predict. And that's what I said before, legal law. This belongs to South Africans, developed by myself. I spent 40 years looking for missing links and atoms not even Einstein knew about. And I've made calculations, not made one mistake from 2004. Not one mistake. Not one single human being's death on my hands. And not one atom missed right throughout. And I can tell you where there's atoms in this layer and this layer that we need to know about. And no scientist knew that until I discovered myself. Thank you very much for listening.